All right, cool. All right, guys, gals, JavaScript developers. My name is John David Dalton, and I'm going to be talking about Lodash. Yeah. All right, so a little bit about me. That's my Twitter handle, @JDalton. The repo, or the organization that Lodash belongs to, is called Bestie.js. And that's the Twitter handle there. Bestie.js is basically a collection of high-quality libraries, utilities that emphasize unit testing, ES5 and 6 precedents, and plenty of documentation. So it's high-quality JavaScript. Before we do a release, we test in all of the supported browsers. We list the supported browsers. Lots of heavy documentation over bugs and things. So that's Bestie.js. I've been working at Microsoft since the end of July. I am a Chakra performance program manager, and so that basically means I am a JavaScript developer that helps the C++ devs know what to focus on and what gives real-world performance results, so our engine can get faster for the things that really matter to JavaScript developers. I also am the primary contributor to Benchmark.js. Before I go on, I'll ask some questions of you guys and gals and JavaScript developers. And instead of raising your hands, I'd like you to say "yar." Can "yar"? All right. All right. So I gotta. On the count of 3, say "yar." Well, all right. Yeah, that's right. All right. I'll take that as great. OK. So. How many people have heard of JSPerf? Yar. All right, cool. How many people have heard of HTML5 Shiv? Yar. All right, cool. So I've contributed to JSPerf. I'm a co-maintainer. I've contributed to HTML5 Shiv. I'm an all-around JS fanboy. If there's a project, I contribute to it. I love libraries and low-level libraries, but I'll also contribute to things like jQuery and MooTools and Dojo and Underscore and you name it. I like making things in JavaScript better. So I will move on to the next slide. Yeah. All right. So what is Lodash? I guess I should say, how many people know what Underscore is? Underscore.js. All right. Yar. Good. So Lodash is a drop-in replacement for Underscore.js that delivers performance, bug fixes, and additional features. And I'll go into each of those and talk you through it. If you're wondering, oh, this is going to be like full of marketing and blah, 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 at the very end, I go through all of the geeky stuff I've learned. And there's a lot of geeky stuff in here. So hold on. Here we go. So performance. If you've looked at Underscore, a lot of times you think, what can you do to improve? What could you do to improve Underscore? Like, what needs fixing? Why create a fork of Underscore? And I really wanted better cross-browser object iteration, and that was the birth of Lodash. I submitted a pull request, it got accepted, and then reverted. And I said, I know what to do. I'll fork it. And so I did. I forked it. And one of the things I use as a carrot or to entice devs is a lot of times bug fixes and consistency. I geek out on that. I like having a consistent API across all supported devices. But a lot of times that doesn't resonate with devs. They don't care. They would rather care about performance. So to offset the cost of bug fixes and consistency, I optimized Lodash. And so the cost of bug fixes doesn't affect performance and doesn't affect file size because I've been able to do a couple of things that I'll discuss. So how did I get performance boosts? First, check out benchmarks, lodash.com/benchmarks. And here's what some people are saying about Lodash. Hey, I dropped it in, got around a 20% perf boost. Hey, I've got better frame rates for dropping in Lodash. So those are real people. All right, so what do I do for performance? I avoid native methods. How many people have always heard use native methods, use native methods, what? Yar! All right. And since I do maintain JSPerf, I keep a track of all these feeds that are going through and people tweeting about performance. And I kept seeing tweets come across that said, yo, for loops are faster than native methods, like native for each and map and filter and every and some. And I thought, oh man, I should test that out. And so at JSConf US, I gave a talk about the hidden cost of natives. And it turns out that in many cases, using simplified alternatives to native methods gives you better performance. And that performance I can use to offset the cost of bug fixes. It does more than just, the cost of natives is more than just performance in this case. It's compatibility. So ES5 comes out, you have some browsers that don't support some of these methods, some browsers that do. And if you take the stance that Underscore has taken, which is use native first, you have issues with compatibility because, for example, in 1.4 plus now, so the newest version of Underscore, they don't support sparse arrays consistently between environments. So newer browsers will iterate over these things without error, and your code will not break because that is what Underscore has always supported, sparse arrays. But if you are out on deadline and then you're going to go and test that older browser for compatibility because it's on your contract, you'll get a JavaScript error because if you have sparse arrays. And it's kind of like a surprise to devs. And I didn't like that. I didn't like surprises being in your API. I wanted a consistent API. And the reason you get this surprise or this incompatibility or inconsistency is because the fallback that Underscore uses doesn't account for these. So it's not a one-to-one shim of native versus the fallback. So what I've done is I say, all right, I won't use native for this. I'll use a simplified for loop, and I'll consistently take a stance on sparse arrays. So Lodash doesn't support them. We treat them as undefined values. And that's great because in some older browsers, they disagree with what they consider a sparse array. And so sparse arrays are arrays that normally it's a dense array. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on with values. But if sparse arrays are created, if you have a length or if you're adding indexes ad hoc, you may create gaps where the arrays don't have indexes. And native methods will skip over them. But the fallbacks won't, and they'll treat them like undefined. And so it ends up coming out like a bug in your code whenever you run into these things. All right, so that's native. So the other part that can cost you is robustness in creating like a utility. So let's say you wanted to use a utility to create like another like button or another widget for your site that's going to be dropped into other people's sites. If you use natives and you opt for native first, you run the risk of running into bad shims. And you're like, well, who does bad shims? Turns out it's really hard to do a good shim of ES5 features. And so there's a lot of bad ones floating around. And that could cause bugs. Not only that, is if they are ES5 compliant, they're actually going to slow your stuff down. So what Lodash does is we detect bad shims. So we do an inference to see if it's a native method. And so on the native methods we do use or conditionally use, we don't use them if they're shimmed because we trust our code more than we trust somebody's third party's code. So that's native methods. And so I imagine when I told you about native methods, you reacted a little bit like this. What? Right. All right. So that's cleared up. So now the next step into gaining performance is reduce the number of function calls. So I know everyone likes abstraction, but abstraction is horrible in a low-level utility library like Underscore or Lodash because this thing is the bare bones. This is what you're going to use and build everything on top of. So abstraction just eats away at that performance and can cause issues. For example, if you're doing a difference method or a union method or a unique method, you can have performance issues there if you abstract that too far away. The next step. Use method compilation. How many people know what method compilation is? A little bit? That's all right. It's OK. So method compilation is, in my case, I'm using a template, which I'll get to in a second. But what it is dynamically creating a method at runtime that is optimized for your current environment. So for example, IE8 has some bugs in it. And just maybe. Newer versions of Chrome have less bugs. And so why should Chrome get the bug fixes that IE8 has? Or why should it slow down its path to do these bug checks that are for another browser? So conditional compilation, in this case, compiling my method at runtime, allows me to create a very optimized method for that runtime. Oh, and check this out. So object.keys. How many people know about object.keys? All right, cool. So So normally, if you don't have object.keys, you do for in, and then you do has own property check. And that's slow, but object.keys is pretty fast in some browsers. And so Lodash optimizes for that seamlessly behind the scenes. So for example, if you're doing an each and you pass an object to it, it will know to use object.keys, which will give you a performance boost in certain browsers. So for example, V8 gets object.keys, but IE8 gets bug fixes. So that's what conditional or method compilation does. And I do this through using a template. So most people use underscore templates or templates in general to do things like HTML construction. But I said, well, couldn't we take templates and construct a function? So that's what I did. I took the template function of underscore and Lodash now and used it to dynamically create my methods. And when I first came out with Lodash, I was like, oh, compilation is awesome. All things compiled, right? But when devs looked at that, they just WTF all day long, what is this? So with 0.9 plus, I've reduced the number of compiled methods from 29 to 5. So it's 5 methods, the core methods, and everything else is built on top of it. So it's very easy to grok the source. So bug fixes. So a lot of times when you hear someone talk about Lodash, you'll hear them say, oh, it's that thing that's faster, the perf, the perf, the perf. And the perf is the carrot. It's really the bug fixes and the consistency in the API and the behavior. So for example, with Lodash, you can iterate over an object, a string, an arguments object, and an array consistently in all supported browsers. And by the way, Lodash lists the supported browsers and the tested browsers, which is a plus. So let me get into some of the fixes. So these fixes. So object iteration issues, and these issues are not just IE. They're in Opera, Firefox, and Safari. And I fix them all, and it's done as during the conditional compilations. So browsers that don't have those bugs don't get it. Also, I handle, like I said before, sparse arrays consistently, as IE less than 9 treats different arrays as sparse and non-sparse. And so this treats them consistently, and also, again, fixing things to where they work on pages with incorrect shims. And so this is Alex Sexton tweeting, hey, he created a plugin and he was using underscore and it broke on pages with old versions of Prototype. And so he used Lodash, everything just worked. Great. So features. So not only did I want to create a replacement for underscore, I wanted to give you an incentive besides perf, because some people go, JavaScript performance isn't the problem, it's the DOM. And so I say, all right, for you guys that don't have perf issues, because this is a general purpose low-level utility. And so you may not have perf issues. So I have features. And some of them are, I have AMD support out of the box. I remember if you, woo, I like it. Underscore used to have it, and then they pulled it out, and I thought that was nuts. Like, it's so easy to add and painless, and devs need it. And I didn't want to make a value judgment on that and say, no, it's worthless. No, I added it for you, so you have that. There's a deep clone, and what deep clone means is normally underscore's method and Lodash's method, without passing the true argument to it, is shallow, meaning that objects in object instances on properties are just copied over directly. And a deep clone means it actually creates a new object, copies all the properties and the values recursively. It doesn't just do it recursively, it does it and handles circular references as well too. So that's really, it's really, I wanted this to be something that I didn't say, well, the dev will have to handle that. This is low-level stuff that should just work. And punting and just throwing up my hands and saying someone else can fix it that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a very low-level, consistent API. So I also provide a way to check if something is a plain object. And for devs that use it, they'll know it's great. For devs that don't use it, it's all right. So basically, it just detects that something is created from the object constructor. And you can get into some tricky situations where you may need this. For example, deep clone uses it, and also merge uses it. I added a late bind for late binding. There's been a lot of articles out there that say, hey, you don't have to initialize everything up front. You can initialize it when you need it. Late bind allows you to create a function bind, that is bound to the object property. So that object property doesn't have to exist when you do your binding. And as soon as that property is defined, the binding is still intact. The method can also be overwritten. So if you do lazy definition, like have an unoptimized method, and then after it's first used, it optimizes itself and replaces itself, the bind is still intact. And so that's what late bind allows. Merge is like jQuery's deep extend. So if you've used deep extend to not just do options, but deep options or sub options, you can do that with merge. Partial is like bind without the this binding. Devs that like prototypes curry will like partial. I also added string support to all of the collection methods, and that's consistently through all collections methods, which is cool too. And there's more features too. So if you go to lodash.com, you'll see a list of features. You'll see unit tests, benchmarks, bug report issues, and all these things there. So I won't cover any more of that. So next up, the biggest thing, and I geek out so much because I used to rail against compilation. I used to think, JavaScript all the way, no need to do a compile or build step. And now I love build steps. They solve all problems. So for example, it's come to a point to where Underscore is starting to get concerned about file size because it's got about 90 functions. And so anymore, it's going to be this bigger library. And I didn't want file size for Lodash to be an issue and prevent me from fixing bugs. And so custom builds allows you to build only the methods you need. So for example, how many people just use like 4 underscore methods? More? Do you use each, for each? All of that? OK. So you can use those methods, and you can create a custom build with just those methods. But it's not just custom methods. I allow you to do basically everything. So this is the list of options here. Lodash is now the most customizable utility library out there. It allows you to customize, to create like a mobile build for new browsers, a legacy build for old browsers, strict mode if you want that. It allows you to customize builds for just Backbone. That gives you just the methods for Backbone and nothing else. It allows you to customize the immediately invoked function expression that wraps the library. So you can take that and actually nest underscore into your existing lib and not expose it. So I mean, it's basically anything you want to do, I've tried to make it to where you can do it with Lodash. And the API, let's say you hate AMD. You can create a build without AMD support. Or you can create a build that just has CommonJS support. So that's customization. It's allowing you to build it how you want. I've also added utilities for compiling templates, because lots of devs like to keep their templates separate. And so now a batch template pre-compiling utility will allow you to specify, for example, the path and configurations, and it will compile that into one file with the templates pre-compiled for you. So there's that. All right. So Lodash isn't just this fly-by-night fork. I've been working on this for more than 6 months. It's gotten adoption in the community, and it's gotten some backers from Backbone. So the next version of Backbone will include Lodash in its documentation as a recommended alternative, or as an alternative to Underscore. And to start that off, there are some Backbone boilerplates that have Lodash in there automatically. So here's a couple of them. There's their Twitter handles, and that is their GitHub repo username and project name. I figure you can fill out the rest of the URL there. All right. So now to the point of geek out. All right. I've got to take a water break. OK. Can I get a yar? Yar! Yar! All right, cool. OK. So I don't just minify Lodash. I have compilation in there for templates. And templates are strings. And strings don't minify so well. So Lodash's build process minifies the template strings. It then turns around and I'm going to end up mixing order because this is crazy. But it turns around and inlines the template itself. So that means the template function doesn't have to be a dependency. You can create a build of Lodash without template. And even though it's compiling, it doesn't have it. It doesn't need to use the underscore.template function. And so minification is not just once. I run it through Uglify. I run it through Closure Compiler. And then I run it through Uglify and Closure Compiler because you can create a smaller build. And so I not only do it with Closure Compiler simple mode, but I do it simple mode, hybrid mode, and then variations on simple and advanced mode. So I automatically escape these things. So you know that in some cases, for example, the Lodash underscore build, you get a smaller build with using the simple mode than advanced. It's crazy, but I do it automatically for you. And that's included in the Lodash build tool, which is, by the way, npm install like /G for global Lodash, that gives you the build utility. And so you'll automatically be able to create these builds, and it automatically minifies these things, inlines the templates, does all that stuff for you.
Yar!
Yar! That's crazy. So I've had to learn. I found a lot of bugs in Clojure compiler, but it's fantastic. I love it. It really crunches things down. And because I do the advanced mode and auto escape the properties, I don't have to worry about it munging everything to death. Next up is templates. So like I said, I use a template, and you know what? I'll just show you that template. So let's see. Not it. This is it. OK. Ba 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 ba. Hold on tight. Wow. Now you done it. Now you done it. All right. Well, this is good. This is good. OK. So a little bit. There you go. So this is what the template looks like. It's just a string or a template that's being passed. And you can see here I'm doing checks for like, hey, if it's use strict, throw the use strict call in there. And then let's see. I specify your first argument. And everything is super commented. So you can read through this and really dig into the guts of Lodash and figure out what's going on. So let me just scroll through here. Like this is talking about accessing strings. So this is how I fix inconsistent character access in strings. This is how I do array-like values. This is object iteration. This is fixing bugs in these versions of Firefox and Opera. This does fast object iteration, which is using object.keys for V8. This does the old for loop. And this fixes IE iteration issues with those properties that it has problems with. And that's it. That little template there is compressed, is inlined. You never have to see it or deal with it. But that gives me the power, because during the build process, I can actually, in Node, because I build this in Node, I can load the source for Lodash. And then I can dynamically change the entries in that template and then use the VM module to run Kit. What's run in context? That's right. So I can use that to run that script that I just modified, and it thinks it's IE. It thinks it's an old IE. And so all those methods are precompiled, and that's how I can inline these things for specific environments. So the compilation isn't necessarily an issue. And I do this, and something else I do is unit tests, because this is one of the most configurable libraries out there. So you'd think, wow, there's lots of potential for breaking. But I've got over 2,000 unit tests dedicated to the build, and I integrate it with Travis CI. So every time I commit, it tests the build, and it tests all my libs unit tests. Something else. Lodash has unit tests that run, one set of unit tests that run in Node, Ringo, Norwal, Rhino, and the browser. It's one set. So if you look at Underscore, it's the #1 Node package manager out there, or #1 package on Node package manager. But its unit tests don't run in Node. So everyone's running this thing untested, basically. And Lodash is tested. Something else I geek out on is conditional npm installs. Initially, when I created Lodash, everyone had to download 5 megabytes of Clojure compiler if they installed the Node package module, which is gross. You don't want to have to do that. So if you do a local install, it knows not to pull those down. But if you do a global install, it knows that you've done a global install and will go ahead and pull down the minifiers for you. That's awesome. I don't know of another package manager or another package that does that. And I got to thank Kit for that, because that was great. All right, cool. Let's see.
That's actually failing right now.
What?
At least on mine.
What is?
Installing global.
Oh! No, so what you've got there is you've got a bug in your npm associated with, do you use in? In? In conditionally installs multiple versions of Node. Try installing npm and Node from the website and do that, and try that. But I just pushed the version. It passes all unit tests. If you've got a problem with it, you can always file a bug report, but it does work. And let's see. And that's it. So that's my website, lodash.com, benchmark.js, and jsperf.com. All right, guys. Thanks. Cool. Yar! All right. Cool.